Welcome to Laid Back Law with your favorite lawyers from around the interwebs, discussing the most pressing of topics every Friday at noon Eastern Time.
All right, we are back, and today we are joined by Dani Ahn-Direct, Ian Runkle, Ron Coleman, Viva Frei, Bill Holloway, who is currently basking in his celebrityness of being quote tweeted by the illustrious Elon Musk, but not to be left out, also cat turd in the same day. So
yeah, it was a wild time, wild time.
Instant virality has occurred for our friend. And I want to start the show off like I have previously, talking about my favorite subject right now, which is LBL topics. The tool that I've been working on now for weeks is getting very, very, very close. I've shown some of the results to different people, but essentially, if you want to suggest a topic for the show, you can just on X use hashtag LBL topics. Like right here, we've got the RFK Jr. libel case. Can't proceed. I actually sent this one because somebody asked about it and they didn't use hashtag LBL topics. So therefore it was invisible. I just happened to notice that they did it. But please note, you have to use LBL topics or I won't see it. What's happening is a gentleman named Incryptus has helped build an engine for me that is scraping X for that hashtag. So if it doesn't exist, nobody can see it. And then we, with that hashtag, are getting suggestions that are coming to us and everybody can kind of look at, decide ahead of time, maybe even promote up more. And the more that you guys see that hashtag, suggest the same topics will actually start to rank higher or lower. So I hope you consider doing that. And for today, that's probably a good topic to start with. David, have you been following that case at all? Oh, God. Of course, he hasn't been listening the whole damn time because he's busy with being Breck Girl down there. David, have you been following the libel case against RFK Jr.?
No.
Well, then, moving on to the next.
Well, I haven't, not enough to talk about immediately. There was a recent filing where there was a motion to dismiss that I believe was itself dismissed. That came earlier this week. But no, we're going to talk about it on Sunday because I know Barnes is involved with it. But
yeah, he's the lawyer on it.
Yeah.
So
no, there have been some developments this week. I just had to change my shirts to get on We'll Be Wild. Yeah, we'll talk about it on Sunday.
All right, well then let me jump over to another topic here. This is James O'Keefe apparently did a FOIA or whatever to get the information about the probable cause as to why the FBI, raided him and pulled him in. And this is what was returned. Basic statement. And then here you go. Here you go. Here you go.
You got to give them credit. At least they blacked it out in black and not white, so you could see just how much was blacked out. The new trick now is to just have all of the redactions in white, so you don't even know how many lines there were.
Okay, so I want to hear from you criminal defense lawyers. How is it a defendant is not allowed to see probable cause as to why they were raided? That seems unconstitutional to me.
Well, let me jump in. So he requested this through a FOIA, Freedom of Information Act request, and he didn't. It's my understanding he didn't try to get this through like any kind of criminal discovery statute because I don't think he's been charged with a crime. So he's not entitled to criminal discovery unless he's been accused of a crime. But I responded to him on X and I said, look, I feel like this FOIA request might have been made, in the last month and a half. I'm not exactly sure when he did it, but the chances are pretty good that it was responded to by sort of the prior regime, if that makes sense. And I would encourage him to do it again once the new management really gets firmly in place, because chances are he's been victimized, if you will, by holdovers or career folks that may not have gotten the memo yet that there's a new way of doing things, and the sort of new transparency. And so I hope that he can revisit his FOIA request and get a better answer. But I think he's sort of the timing of it was unfortunate because it would have been filled by essentially the prior senior management, or maybe not even senior management. They don't do FOIAs, but the directives of senior management were different than they are now.
Okay. Anybody else have thoughts? Because that just seems weird to me. Like, okay, I get the idea if there's no charge that's been filed, but if somebody raids you, I think you have a right to know why you're raided. It doesn't seem to be unfair to ask that. Am I wrong? Ron, you're muted.
You have to listen to what Phil said. That's true, but from the point of view of FOIA, James's FOIA request is no different from Danny's. Okay. He's not asking for that information as a party. He's asking for it as a citizen. So he has to go through the front door, which could be difficult because he wasn't charged.
Right. Well, but again, that's my question.
So
I understand. No, hold on. I understand about the FOIA aspect that it would be the same as me filing the FOIA. They're responding as if it's the public. But if you're saying that he can't do it through the other door, I'm saying that what door can he use? Because as a citizen, if somebody busts my door down legally, FOIA-wise, whatever the hell it is, I feel like I have a right to know the probable cause for their doing that, be it legally or otherwise.
So that probably would be a great bill for us to include in our legal reform package.
Yeah, 100%.
But as Phil points out, since he hasn't been charged, and so the FOIA door is closed, it might very well help, but it might not if he resubmits the FOIA because it's different personnel. The problem is for justice that they might want to say, we really, unless the law requires it in the new reform bill that I just mentioned, we don't want to be in the business of giving this kind of information out. When we decide not to prosecute someone, that's the end as far as we're concerned, and we don't want to expose ourselves to litigation. In other words, we're the Justice Department. So I'm saying that they might like James now in a way that they hated James 3 months ago or 3 weeks ago, but they may not still be ready to make a change or to do an exception for James, which is problematic also. So litigation is probably going to have to happen.
What's the criteria for redacting information based on a FOIA request?
For the
there's a whole laundry list of things that
they have a bunch of.
Well, I mean, like it gives out general criteria.
This does whatever the hell it wants.
Because this is in the context of the Ashley Biden diary, where they go and seize his cell phones because they allege that he orchestrated the illegal purchase. I mean, I'm just curious in general what the themes could be and how they could possibly apply in this case.
Ron, I have a question which follows up on that question, actually. Does it matter that he is a news organization, that he runs and operates a news organization, and as a reporter, he's seeking this information through FOIA?
I think that under the FOIA rules, I'm not an expert on FOIA by any stretch of the imagination. I don't know that it matters under FOIA, but if he appeals the FOIA compliance, then that would be a factor that I do believe a court would look at.
Okay.
Eric,
Eric, was your question about if someone does a search of your property, do police have
correct? Yeah, if you get raided, like if cops come in and they seize my stuff and whatever else, I feel like I have a right to know.
So you're not talking about the FOIA request, because if the cops search your house, you have a right. They must give you a copy of the warrant.
No, they have to leave the return, which is a list of the things that they took. They don't have to leave the affidavit that supports the search warrant, and that's what he was after.
Oh, okay, because they hand you a copy of the warrant.
Yeah,
not
you
the
can,
affidavit,
you can get a
warrant
copy.
and
No,
the
yeah,
thing,
the search warrant itself, though, that doesn't explain why. The why of it all is contained in the affidavit that is a constitutional requirement. That affidavit would have been presented to a judge who authorized the warrant, having found probable cause based on the affidavit and any associated oral testimony given at the time. But they don't usually leave. I've seen it done on accident a handful of times, but they don't leave. And by they, I mean state and local authorities. They don't leave the actual affidavit that supports the search warrant. They don't leave that. They leave a return listing everything that was taken along with a copy of the warrant. And the warrant itself just lists the place that's going to be searched and signed by a judge.
Yeah, the things that we're looking for. So yeah, so Eric, so yeah, when they do come, you get a copy of the warrant, and then after we take what we take, there's usually a list of stuff. Here's what we took based on this warrant. And the warrant usually outlines like we're looking for this or that.
Yeah, it was interesting though, because I know I looked through that what James O'Keefe posted. Normally, when they do their redactions, though, they have to tell you why they're redacted and for what purposes. And Viva, you're asking about it. There are a bunch of exceptions that do exist out there, and obviously they're going to say, "Oh, it's national security or it involves intelligence." They're going to argue it shows. One of the other ones they like to show, especially with law enforcement, is it reveals a confidential source of their tactics and techniques. And you're like, well, what was their tactic or technique? Well, we can't tell you because you might learn what we do. It's like you extort.
They would have given that. Yeah, that's exactly right. They would have given that sheet with another page with the reasons for the redactions.
Yeah,
and he didn't post that online. So there's more to it than what he posted.
But certainly though, with the FBI, I'm assuming most of the times they put those out there, they put them there and they hope you aren't going to contest it because, I mean, especially in this situation. I can only imagine it's, oh my God, we relied on this garbage and ran with it.
If you look at it, I'm looking at it. The footnote is redacted in paragraph H, but then it says on the bottom, footnote 18. Based on my training and experience, I have learned, among other things, that cell phones are capable of sending and receiving emails. They didn't redact that. That's
I noticed that. Yeah, that, and it turns out that's really a cool secret that we'd like to all learn.
Yeah,
based on my extensive training within the FBI, cell phones make phone calls.
Wow. Okay, well, I'm just a dumb citizen that feels like I have fewer rights. Thank you very much, federal government.
You're welcome.
I love it. I love it. I want to jump to one for Ian. I'm assuming Ian may know something on it. If not, let me know. But there's implications about a judge dismissing an NFA machine gun charge. That was a tweet that came in. I don't know who sent it or whatever because it's got caught up in the spreadsheet and it's been there for a minute. But
now I haven't actually read the case yet because I have been at the Court of Appeal here fighting on other gun issues. So that was on my to-do list for the weekend. I'm vaguely aware of it, but I haven't yet followed. I think I see Sean raising his hand though.
Yeah, I ended up taking a look at it, Eric. So, so it's interesting. A judge down in Louisiana, or Mississippi, I'm sorry. You could tell he's not thrilled with the outcome, but he actually did the right thing. He did his job. He put the fries in the bag and applied Bruin properly.
Your diary. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Well, no, it was a lot better than the judges in D.C. caterwauling for 10 pages. But he did say yes. And he did bring up a great point, and this is a point that's been made before with multiple people. This guy had a machine gun in his home. It wasn't like he was walking down the street robbing banks with a machine gun. It was just sitting in his house, not doing anything. And he pointed out, that is an issue here, and the federal government got over its skis, and he declared that the as-applied challenge, succeeded here. So applied to this guy, yes, this one guy, it worked. It doesn't apply to everybody in the District of Mississippi. It doesn't apply to anybody in the Fifth Circuit except this guy. And that's the thing. When you win in a criminal case, it only applies to you. So it's not, like these typical lawsuits where people are suing and it's a civil case where you get a nationwide injunction. Right now, it's only that one guy. And yeah, he got away with it, which is great. Now it becomes the issue of, will that get appealed? Who knows what's going to happen there, because Pam Bondi's not she's a Republican, but she's not exactly the most 2A friendly person in the world.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's going to go to the Fifth Circuit, but we also saw in the Fifth Circuit this week, the Fifth Circuit also made a ruling that a suppressor or a silencer, whichever you prefer to call it, is not considered an arm that's covered by Second Amendment protections, which is funny because under the National Firearms Act, a silencer, yes, that just a metal tube with a bunch of holes in it, is considered a firearm under federal law, but somehow a court is determining, well, but it's not covered by the Second Amendment, so therefore illegally possessing a silencer is still a crime. So there was, this one guy got a dub, and then this other guy took a big L. So it's very interesting what happened. And it's in the same circuit, the Fifth Circuit.
Did they order that the guy gets his machine gun back?
I don't think he's going to be that lucky. I think he's just going to walk away and call it a day.
That's
quick wise ahead. Yeah.
That's usually the place you get to. It's like, all right, and when do I get my thing back? It's like, no, just
you can always just make another one too.
Take the win.
That's the solution. Okay, Danny, you sent this in the group chat.
So there were some concerns about some military incursions that were threatened by Trump, and certainly some military action. And I tried to assuage people's concerns because 80% of Americans ages 17 to 24 are unfit for military service. The vast majority of the unfitness stems from literally being unfit. These people are overweight and out of shape and do not qualify. The good news is, though, and I would like to announce this,
that we're all over 24.
We have a 15-year record of recruitment in the Army right now after Hegseth was confirmed. So there are good things happening in terms of national security, and I'm happy to see that. That was all I was. That's all. The only reason I brought that up. I'm far more interested in the USAID topic, so I'll
no, that's fine. A super chat just came in about the last topic. I apologize. What about that? It was not an as applied challenge. The judge simply reclassified it as applied by himself. What is? I don't understand the super chat.
When it comes to when you're challenging constitutional things, you're challenging it facially or as applied. Those are the two ways you challenge it. Now, even the Supreme Court has said a lot of times those lines are very blurred, and there are times when you're doing these challenges, the courts have looked at it as there's no difference. But when you're challenging it on its face, it's completely invalid. The law itself should never exist.
A judge can, if a judge says that your facial challenge fails, and you didn't also do an as-applied challenge, which is not good practice, then you could just get dismissed. But the judge has discretion to drop it down and say, we'll amend the papers retroactively, which the court has certainly got discretion to do, or we'll treat it as a facial challenge and then make the ruling that way.
Yeah, and the judge, exactly, Ron. The judge could say, what I think you mean is this is as applied. And it's either way, guys, even if, who's asking the question, even if it's facially challenged, it's this case. It's not going to send shockwaves through the District of Mississippi that you could start, firing up the drill press for your, start making it happen out there or printing Yankee Boogles. It doesn't work like that. So that's all I would say there. But yes, I agree. It probably should have been a facial challenge, but I don't know why the judge ended up doing this way. I didn't get a chance to go through all the filings yet on that. But they certainly could have gone both ways on it, or as Ron said, the judge could have made the decision there. But either way, a guy got one over on the federal government, so I'm happy with it.
Okay. That comment in the chat, I think Danny's like 7.5 feet tall in real life, right? Like that's
yeah. Fair enough. Okay. Well, you know what, Danny, you mentioned DOGE. I think there's definitely a little bit of meat there. Probably something for everybody to feast on, except I'm not getting paid. I very much regret that. But here's a brief or a list from Grok, and it doesn't even have the Politico programs.
Oh, I love that one.
Yeah. A lot of interesting things on that. And the Politico thing, I think, is kind of funny because I don't know if you guys have heard of the show Two Way. It has Mark Halperin, Sean Spicer, former press secretary of Trump, first time, and Dan Turrentine, who is a actually reasonable Democrat to listen to. He doesn't make my head hurt. Mark Halperin has been trying to carry water for Politico and saying, no, this is just an enterprise type of thing. And you put that out there so the companies can pay the big money, and that's going to sustain, and businesses do that. Which I do know that there's the, enterprise level, or the quote unquote corporate discount, which has always been my favorite thing in the world, where I would go to a conference or something and I would pay the corporate discount, which would happen to match exactly the government per diem on the day. But then if I would go and have to book for a friend or whatever who's going to meet me, it's like $100 cheaper, for like normal people.
Yeah. Isn't that weird how it works?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think he's trying to express the Politico thing as one of those. I kind of lean towards the Tim Pool version, which is it is a way of influencing the message or paying things off when you're averaging thousands of dollars per person for a subscription. And this pro subscription doesn't even have prices listed on the website. That's a little sus, but feel free to jump in. And
Yeah.
Okay, I'm jumping in first. Is that okay?
Yeah, I'm second.
Because I got made fun of. So when I ran for office here in Salt Lake, and I hate to bring this up, but I felt so vindicated when all of this information came out. So first of all, for anybody, because I'll tell you what the next play of the left is going to be. The next play of the left is going to be, oh, well, all this information was public, and if you were just paying attention to where your money was going, you wouldn't be as shocked and appalled as you are now. That's absolute BS. Our Congress, and not only Congress, but the State Department has been asking USAID where the money was going, where it was coming from. Was it going to such and such program? Because the USAID has repeatedly undermined the actions of the State Department in various states. But that's one thing, okay? Let's go ahead and just set that aside here for a moment. USAID wasn't just funding to the tune of $2 billion all of the Soros DAs that were already in place. They were also directly funding the investment groups that were also putting into these Soros DAs campaigns. And they were also funding the investment groups that paid directly into the newspaper outlets,
laundering it.
The candidates running against these DAs in all of their local jurisdictions repeatedly. Well, when I brought this up, and I brought up the fact that, by the way, the USAID was originally constructed not as a charity organization, but rather an operating mechanism for the CIA to go and carry out its operations overseas without having the money traced back to the CIA, so that everyone knew what the CIA was up to, because we don't want that. We want to be able to propagandize our friends and our allies and our enemies overseas, and to conduct these operations overseas to manipulate and to contain, or to gain and maintain control in the international sphere. What the problem is that all that money, rather than going internationally, is all coming back to us. It's all being used against the American people to propagandize us. There's the problem right there. Why are we wasting money propagandizing our own people? And you said before, well, maybe it's these subscription rates. It's not that weird. Everybody has subscriptions. You can ask any attorney on this panel. We all subscribe to Bloomberg, LexisNexis, whatever, legal trade, operation that we need. But that's okay. That's one thing. But here, like you were saying, the prices aren't listed. And the reason why is because it's a freaking mafia pull. This is exactly what the mob does. They show up, they say, hey, look, you buy a couple subscriptions from us to the tune of, 500,000, 8 million, depending on what it is. And then we will write some puff pieces about you and make your agency look great, so that Congress continues to funnel money to you that you do not deserve and have not earned. Why do you think NASA is spending $500,000 on these subscriptions? Why do you think these no-name agencies are spending money where it doesn't matter? Well, duh, because it makes them look good, and it funnels more money to them. The more money that they get, the more that they spend. It is the most corrupt, bloated system there is. And it just exemplifies everything wrong, not only with the USAID, but with the IRS and with all of these agencies that believe that they're truly independent, that don't see that they are acting at the will of the president, that don't understand that they are subject to the will of the people. They genuinely are money laundering operations. And I hate to to, you know, boil it down to just that. But these are terms that people understand and can digest, because the problem is so prolific and so large that it is difficult to speak in any other form than you know, basic modern day parlance to try and convey the scope of this. So that's all I wanted to say. Ooh.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about propaganda for a long time now, but most recently I've just been thinking a ton about it, because this is how it all plays out. Look, whether you're talking about Goebbels back in Nazi Germany or anywhere else in time, the only way a government can basically implement propaganda is if the government owns the media outlets or rents the media outlets. And that's what's going on here. They're renting these media outlets, as Danny pointed out, for, you know, puff pieces and things that are oftentimes even planted pieces, which is purely propaganda. And the why of it all is because they want to keep the party in power and to win the next election. It's all about winning the next election. But from the 10,000 foot level, I mean, why? I mean, I've been a government employee. I didn't need my employer to pay for my subscription to America Online or whatever it was at the time. You know, if I want to spend my working hours surfing the web on Politico or any other thing, which I shouldn't be doing in the first place, I need to pay for that subscription out of my own pocket, because it's not my employer's job. Politico, on whatever they put out on their website, they already have created that content. They have created that space where that content lives. It doesn't cost them anymore to provide that subscription to any particular individual. So when the government starts funneling millions and millions of dollars in there in the form of these subscriptions on behalf of employees who shouldn't be having paid subscriptions in the first place, and who shouldn't be surfing Politico online during the workday in the first place, when they do that, they are literally just funneling money. In other words, it's not like if I sell a widget, that's my product, and I sell one to Eric and I sell one to David and one to Danny. I mean, it costs me money every time I create one of those widgets, right? But not in the case of these subscriptions. They being Politico, they've already spent the money. So everything that they get in all these extra subscriptions, that's pure profit, pure revenue. There's no cost of doing business built into that. So it's just purely a way to hide the funneling of taxpayer money designed to spread propaganda.
Yeah, and they funnel it by doing the basic bare minimum work. Oh, we track legislation for people. Why does the government need a private party to track legislation? It's the government. Like,
yes, I know my opinions. I feel bad because I know the chat's going to attack me. I know everybody on the panel is going to be upset at me.
That's okay.
Because I gotta say what I gotta say.
Do it.
Do it. So I agree with most of the points, but I've worked for many with the subscriptions, for instance. I've worked for many government agencies that paid for my subscriptions. One of the biggest subscriptions I had was Westlaw and LexisNexis. I didn't pay a dime because my government agency, when I was a prosecutor, they paid it for the job.
Yeah.
And they also do this with, and when I was in other places, they had other subscriptions to this. Now,
that's appropriate.
I think people are confusing Politico, the news organization, with the Political Pro service. The Political Pro service in some areas, if you're doing, especially if you're doing government, if you're lobbying and doing stuff like that, there's a, like for instance, the White House's cyber director just bought $35,000 worth of the Political Pro premium subscriptions. And I'll only reason why, because I looked this up after me and Eric checked it out. Political Pro is a collection of trade publications that track legislation, lobbying, and elections. Now, this is all for if you're in that particular world of lobbying. So that's why people buy the Political Pro subscription, so they can also track it. For those of you who are in,
which is exactly
stocks,
relevant to USAID.
No, I'm saying USAID, but they're one of the agencies who pay for that subscription. For instance, if you're in the
energy department, I think
not even the energy department. If you're doing stocks, the SEC, they pay for the Bloomberg towers. the
but that
Bloomberg
makes
computers
sense,
with
though.
monitors,
That
so
actually
they
is
can see
relevant.
with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying it makes sense.
And by the way,
I'm
Nate,
saying
Yeah,
Bloomberg-
no,
Bloomberg
we're not
published their
USAID
attacking
is
price.
not the
Hold
only
on.
person who's paying for these subscriptions. and the
Bloomberg
subscriptions
publishes
aren't-
their price. Bloomberg publishes their price.
Yes, but for instance,
you and I could go
for-
get that. We don't have to call and say,
for a long
know.
for all of you lawyers here, for a long amount of time, Westlaw didn't publish how much you had to call them and to go and talk to
It's
them
true.
directly before,
Mhm.
and now they've published them, but before a long time they didn't publish
Yes.
them. So I
That's
understand that argument, but I'm just saying I'm just saying that there are in this instance, you know, some of the things that like
There are some
jobs don't
legitimate
pay,
uses.
there
We
are
agree with you.
I'm not
Nate.
saying USAID is legitimate. I'm not saying that's
Nate.
legitimate. I'm just giving you the other perspective.
I want
How
them
much
to
were you
fight
making,
for-
Nate?
That's right. Ah!
Guys,
Where's your check? I couldn't find you on
Nate
there.
did nothing wrong.
Nate,
Also,
Nate,
for
you
Westlaw,
can't-
the amount they publish isn't necessarily what it costs.
No, here's the thing. What many of our viewers may not know what Westlaw and LexisNexis are. These are actual research tools that attorneys need to do their job better. It's more cost efficient to lay out the money for Westlaw and LexisNexis. If you're an attorney or you're a DA office, it's much more beneficial to you to lay out the cost for access for all of your employees, and Westlaw and LexisNexis both know this. It's much more beneficial to them to lay out the money because these are the research tools we use in order to find cases that are on point and relevant to our cases that may be detrimental to our position. So this way we can refute them in advance rather than being getting hit from the side and not realizing that a case has been overturned or that it's easily distinguishable from our case. It's you're a much better lawyer if you have easy access to it. That is not remotely comparable to giving millions of people access to some political news article, which is not an inherent necessity for the performance of your job. So I mean, I agree with you. I certainly understand why every district attorney's office would be paying and every large firm would be paying for their employees to have access to those subscriptions, and that Westlaw and LexisNexis are probably not going to give them much of a, I'll give them some bulk discount rates, but they're not going to be giving them, for access for free because they know that's where they're making their money from. That's the only source of their revenue. Yeah. That's not remotely comparable to saying, oh, we need to give you access to New York Times. You work for the government. You need to know about New York Times, political, one thing after another. Why would that possibly be a necessity for countless people in a job?
Just so you understand, just like you're saying, LexisNexis and Westlaw's necessities for what we do. It's a database, for research tool database. Politico has the newspaper portion, which I think that's what you're talking about. Why should they have access to that? But they're actually paying for the research portal. The research portal shows the upcoming legislation. Like it has it all in one place. So they're paying for that. And they're not the only people paying for that. Other government agencies also pay for this research portal so they can do it. So it's their version of LexisNexis, but just in that particular sphere for lobbying, for statutes, for all that stuff. That's
Nate, I'm sure that some of those subscriptions are perfectly legit. I think there are probably some people that genuinely need that, but I think that it's real easy to over purchase these subscriptions as a way to funnel money back to the company, because you can't, all these people don't need that many subscriptions. That's just my take. I do have to run here in a minute. I just wanted to say, have a great weekend, everybody. If I disappear, nice to see all of you here, as well as those of you in the chat.
Same here. I'm gonna bail along with Phil.
Okay.
I wish I could hang out, guys. I've got a big week ahead. I'm going to be arguing in front of the Ninth Circuit in Honolulu.
Oh, nice. What time does our flight leave, Ron? I'll meet you at the airport.
Good luck, Ron. Good luck, Ron.
I'm going to leave my proxy with Nate. Nate, okay? Are you good?
Right. Sunday morning at 9:00. Right. Guys, have a great weekend.
Good luck.
All right, thanks.
Bye,
Danny,
guys.
you're
Bye,
up.
Ron.
All right.
Yeah,
If he has
so
a bad day, he's still in Hawaii.
I don't want to go far afield from what is the actual problem here. The actual problem here is that USAID is donating to the Rockefeller Foundation, which then donates to Democracy Now!, which then donates directly to news organizations and gives money to these nonprofit news organizations like I have here at the Salt Lake Tribune. And by the way, it was hilarious because I got attacked for pointing this out. All I did was point it out and said I felt very vindicated as a candidate. And one of the reporters from that news organization decided to bring it up on Blue Sky. He's no longer invited on Twitter because he tried to peddle child corn type books that were outlawed in our state to a bunch of kids. after they were banned in our libraries. So,
Like there's a
you know,
pattern over on Blue Sky.
And
of
I
all
wanna
the
make- I
people
wanna-
to attack me, I'm
Blue
okay with
Sky's
that.
a cesspool.
Yeah, and I want to make it very clear. I don't disagree with anything Danny
Yes.
has said. I just wanted to make sure the distinction between
There is a good
political-
distinction there.
Yeah, but
Well, and-
everything that you said is absolutely true. They've been
and-
giving
and-
money. Like,
yeah.
97% of the money they give out is to Democratic causes, which is ridiculous.
Right.
Yeah, and
They didn't exactly have Breitbart Pro.
No.
Pro on
Yeah,
that
they were.
that's
Yeah,
the
that's
thing.
true. They were Viper wasn't on there.
You know, and as Danny mentioned, it's a way to launder this money, and you track it along, and you know, it's starting to end up in places. And you know, as far as people were talking about the George Soros stuff, George Soros did this the smartest way in the world. He let the Open Societies Foundation go to the Tides Foundation, and then it
Yep.
starts filtering into DA's pockets.
Mhm.
George Soros is doing this without having to spend a dime. He did it a very brilliant way.
Well, of course,
but
he,
yes,
he
seeing
did get
these
rich
webs of-
for a reason. I mean,
Yeah,
he-
Well,
he-
yeah, rich people stay rich by not spending their own money.
This question is on
Yeah.
point, I think, too, though. Does Congress's authority to allocate funding give them the authority to compel the executive branch to disperse or spend those funds?
Not really. I mean, the
No.
government, the executive has the authority to execute the laws. You
Yeah.
know, Congress could try to attach some restrictions, but there have been many times where the Supreme Court's like, no, you can't restrict in that way. Now, there are times where they can put strings on the funding, but it's limited. It's, you know, the separation of powers.
It has to
then-
begin with their origin,
Yeah.
their originating bill. So
Yeah.
you know, if you create the FAA and you say, you know, each year the FAA shall distribute its entirety or shall use the extent of
Mhm.
its budget, then that's different. And the DoD has similar for some sub agencies within the DoD. That's how they operate. So when you hear people saying, "Oh, I need to hurry up and run up my budget as quick as I can," it's because those agencies have requirements.
Yes.
But a lot of the arguments now are being made about reliance too. Like a lot of these federal employees,
Mhm.
you're funding us for about a certain year. We've signed contracts, so now we're relying on that money to come in. So you can't just
Too
cut it off
bad.
a certain amount. So yeah, but
Which
again, I think that works for the DACA. DACA.
Yeah, that was a DACA thing,
That was all
yes.
reliance, right?
But yes,
They-
but
they-
this is
that's-
literally fraud. Like you guys were screwing around, and
Oh yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and Phil mentioned
Well-
this before with the propaganda, and this is something I know, Eric, your friend Mark, you guys have talked about before on America's
Mhm.
Untold Stories, is Operation Mockingbird. It never went away. They just changed
is.
how they did it.
Oh,
And-
and
No,
then
they
they
didn't change,
renamed
they
another
added- hold on,
thing,
they added to
Project
it.
Mockingbird,
yeah,
to try and
it's-
further confuse
yeah,
the public.
It's no longer just the traditional way the church committee described it. They use different things now, and nowadays, especially like you see CNN, MSNBC, the amount of intelligence officials and the amount of glowies they bring on as consultants and contributors, they kind of cut out the middleman. They just bring them in, and then the money comes flowing in through the back door. And yeah,
Well,
they
would you
have,
look at this, Sean? I happen to have
Yes.
a thread pinned to my profile that I
yes,
just put out, talking about social media mockingbird, which is a term I'm going to claim.
Nice.
Where
It doesn't
we
flow
did
though.
go
You need
with-
something.
it's a
you need
gaggle of
something-
birds.
Did you include the CIA's public notice saying we're hiring social media influencers?
No, not.
I'll
on-
have
on this
to
thread,
send
but-
that
Well,
to you.
and that makes sense, you know, and I would expect the CIA wanting to be able to take to the battlefield on Twitter and Instagram, because you know, dealing with foreign countries, this is how people communicate now. Like I totally expect
Yep.
that, but we know they're doing it here too.
Well, it's not just the
So,
CIA. Hold on, the FBI's
Yes.
got their piece too.
Yes, they
Come
them
on.
too. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, remember, it wasn't the CIA that had weekly meetings at Twitter. It was the FBI.
Yes. Well,
So,
I'm sure the FBI tipped them off of what's going on there too. Though.
But I think Nate made a fair point, though. In contract law, there is a concept of what's written in an agreement versus an established course of dealing between the parties, and that there could be a creation of a contractual obligation to pay based on that established course of dealing. So in theory, if Politico, let's say for many years, has been reliant on them buying these subscriptions, even in theory, it's possible that could create some sort of obligation on the part of the government to at least give some sort of termination period rather than just cutting it short. I'm not saying I like it. I'm just saying that I can understand how someone can interpret the law fairly that way.
I can understand that too, but it's just like you sign a contract, you're organizing with somebody, and it turns out like somebody up the chain was a complete flawed swindler and everything, and the whole project dies. Like,
right.
Force
Okay.
majeure, baby.
That's a
like
But
That-
you,
it has
that
to-
would be a
talking
factor.
about-
That would be a factor to consider.
yeah, but you're
I
talking
think.
about making that. You're talking about voiding the contract. So you would
Yeah.
then have to. You'd have to then ask a legal because you're saying fraud. So they would have to prove that fraud, obviously,
Right.
to void the
Mhm.
contract. Because if you have a contract for a year, you're still going to pay that year up. That's why I think Trump did
Mhm.
the 8 months. You know, to say, hey, because that gives you that reliance. That it essentially effectively removes that reliance piece. You got 8 months of pay before
Yeah.
you get out of here.
That actually is a topic that we were going to talk about, but I want to get this in. USAID was also funding terrorist groups.
Yep.
Yes, like
Oh, yeah.
defrauding
Oh, yeah,
government.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
USAID is horrible.
it-
We all can agree
It
with that.
depends on the current target of the terrorist group.
Yeah.
It's nothing new. Been
Yeah.
done
This
for
is true.
centuries.
Yes, HTS is now our friend apparently.
But don't forget though,
The
all
Mujahideen was
these-
America's friends in the 80s.
Bin
Yes.
Laden
That's
was
right,
trained by
Bin
the
Laden and
CIA.
everything. We funded Bin Laden for a time. So.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Saddam Hussein. He
Saddam
was our
Hussein,
buddy
yeah.
before he wasn't.
Yes.
Anybody followed Black Hawk Down? The guy
Yes.
behind that we funded. He was
But
trained
the-
by the
Castro,
CIA.
yes.
Here's the
It's a
difference
on
with
and
funding
on.
Bin Laden. But here's the difference with the whole funding Bin Laden, which is true. But we were funding him, I think, at a time where we thought he was the less extreme element. Over here, when we're funding Hamas in 2024, it's not that he's the less extreme element. America has a very rich history, rich and embarrassing history of supporting a new entity that's going to come over and hopefully take over for a worse entity, which 9 times out of 10, the entity we're supporting ends up being much worse than the one we originally were supporting. That goes all the way back to like the 1930s. I mean, we have a very rich history of making poor choices on who the new guy we like better ends up becoming. But that's
Fidel
very
Castro.
different. But right, okay, fine. But precisely. But the point is over here when you're
Sandinistas,
funding
then the
Hamas.
Contras.
When you're funding Hamas in 1.3 billion, according to the Daily Caller, in 2024, I mean, you know what they are. You've already labeled them a terrorist organization. There's no justification of we're hoping that they're better than somebody that we want to be deposed and that they'll be the better option because they're already the worst option in the room. So
Actually, Israel was kind of funding Hamas a little bit too. It's rumored.
But when
Back in the day.
Israel was funding Hamas, they were making the same mistake that America made, where they were hoping Hamas was better than the PLO. That's back when Hamas was in its infancy. That's different than funding Hamas when they are full-blown terrorist organization. That's my point. The timing on the funding is very significant.
And the human trafficking that we fund directly through USAID, I think. needs to
all
be
the human
noted.
trafficking through the Darien Gap.
It's not just that. No, I'm talking like actual buying and selling of children overseas. There's a reason why Russia banned any sort of adoptions for the US back during the Obama administration. And we scream about this. You guys, if you follow any one of our channels, I guarantee you each one of us at some point has screamed about US funding absurd and obscene projects that are morally reprehensible. I think what's important though is that finally there are so many people who have not been on notice who are now on notice. And it's really great to see. And I'm glad that we have DOGE because clearly OPM was not doing their job.
Well, it's kind of wonderful
Amen to
because
that.
this is not only exposing these projects, which is obviously important, but in my opinion, exposing who's defending it, exposing who's upset about it. That is really the enlightening part. You're going, wait a minute, why are you upset about USAID? Why, you Congress people, why aren't you lining up saying, you know what, you're right, we need to clean it up? You're actually defending this? That's very interesting. Why is that happening?
Yeah, and it's not just who's defending, and it's how they are defending. It's not, for instance, I saw this one in the example you show there, 6 million in funding tourism in Egypt. Well, that's planting spice.
Sure.
6 million. Yeah, you can understand that.
That
But
might actually be defendable if
that-
it's,
yes,
an
but-
operation.
Why don't they defend? Okay. We understand this part. I mean, the many letters in Sahara, I don't know. But why not pick? Why go so broad? No, stop doing this. Okay. What exactly do you want us to stop doing? What do you want us to stop defunding? And why? Give us a damn reason.
Well, I think, again, and this is me just speculating. But when the CIA buys a toilet for $400, we all say, "Oh my God, the plumbers are
That's
taking
usually the
kickbacks,"
army.
right? We know the toilet seat doesn't cost $400, right? They're buying a $5 toilet and spending the money for something else. And I think that's what Rubio and everybody seems to be suggesting, is that USAID was that type of funneling source where you'll give $6,000 to teach DEI in Serbia, but that money's not going to any into DEI in Serbia. That money is going for obviously other things, and I think that's what's now being exposed, is that funneling apparatus, because USAID obviously looks like a fraud. But now it's just kind of like, okay, if we stop doing these things, what are the other repercussions? Because this is what most people know as soft pressure to other countries. Well, we'll take away this $1 billion we're funneling to you if you stop doing that. And that's what Hunter Biden and all of them were doing over there in Ukraine. That's kind of soft pressure. So,
Burisma was funded by USAID as well. But
well, and there's, I guess I just want to
share this. I shared this link with Eric. With Eric.
Hold on, let Ian talk.
Sesame Street.
Ian's been quiet now for a while.
This is Sesame Street, and I think that's money well spent. That's Sesame Street in Iraq.
I'll pull it up, but go on, Ian. I don't want to give him a chance.
Okay, go ahead.
I mean, this is all U.S. politics, which I usually avoid.
And,
so,
to be fair, if you start scamming USAID money, I'm okay with that. You're foreign, so it counts. But Nate, you're talking about the soft power. Yes, soft power does have a purpose. But like, for example, like in Niger and Burkina Faso and Mali right now, we lost control of that because we're like, here, we want to help you develop your country. And oh, by the way, you have to, we have to have drag queen story hour as part of it. Well, if I'm the guy who just runs Niger, I'm like, I didn't, launch a coup to do drag queen story hour. These Russian and Chinese guys, yeah, they're going to come in and be heavy-handed and want a bunch of mining rights. And, when I need them to, wipe out these villages of, the other ethnic groups I hate, they might accidentally wipe out a lot more people than intended. But you know what? I don't have to do drag queen story hour. So the soft power has been perverted and screwed up. Now, like, this actually think is good.
Yeah, let's see this. This is
this is great.
Sesame Street funding.
Give me rock.
I'm fine with this.
السلام عليكم يا جماعة. أهلا وسهلا فيكم. خلينا نقللكم على الهواء بالأبجدية. يلا خلينا نبدأ.
Okay.
What the hell?
You're not going to get this channel.
Don't worry, it's fine. I didn't get dinged on it.
All right.
It's fine. It's fine. This is amazing.
This terrorist propaganda.
This is so good.
This is hilarious.
This is crazy. Ceasefire. They screaming ceasefire. Oh my god.
But actually doing Sesame Street and doing things like that around the world, I don't have a problem with introducing education and doing the Western subversion like that. That's fine. I think that's what we should be doing. But having in Colombia, raising awareness of
the benefits of cocaine.
Blind quadriplegic. Yeah, the benefits of cocaine.
No, literally, the president just came out and said something to that effect.
I know, yes.
It's the same as whiskey.
Just like whiskey, yeah. But no, there are uses for it. There are uses for getting the world into supporting us and doing what we want. But they've clearly gone out. It's mission creep. And
Eric,
now
Can I just say two more things and I'm out. I'm done. I'm not going to talk the rest of the day. The whole thing I wanted to talk about was USAID. So these are the last two things I wanted to say. One, what also pisses me off about this is USAID was taking tax dollars funding Fidelity investments. And then all of the local counties nationwide were using Fidelity investments to build their local bridges and taking out loans for Fidelity to finance for these local bridges. That shit pisses me off because you are literally, it's just trading hands so that Fidelity can get a little bit off the side, right? And not a little bit. We're talking to the tune of 20%. is how much Fidelity is sometimes taking on some of these deals with local partners. So that is upsetting to me. And then finally, this is the last thing I'm going to say. Eric, you had mentioned before, look at the people who are defending this. Have you been watching and following Secretary Duffy and Hillary Clinton's exchanges on Twitter? Because it's pretty golden. His it got so heavy that his daughter ended up retweeting saying, my dad does not want to self-delete. And it's pretty golden. If you guys haven't checked out that exchange, you absolutely should. That's all I was going to say.
Secretary Duffy and Hillary.
Yeah. Head of the FAA. Because she came in and basically said, oh, well, we haven't had a major accident in 16 years. And under your watch, this happened. He's like, okay, I guess we're going to ignore the fact that I've only been in office for, 7 days. But okay, let's go from here. He's like, I know you're projecting and really upset because you're about to be exposed and all of your friends and gifts through USAID and what they're doing over there at DOGE. But maybe don't take it out on the American people. We can't wait to see you fall apart. Like, it's just so brutal, his takedown. I'm not doing it justice.
Wow.
What did happen with that plane crash for DC? Because at first it was DEI for the FAA for the air, but then with the air traffic controllers actually did the right thing. Then it was DEI for the pilot of the chopper.
Well, there was
so it was
multiple
like
things.
it's like moving a little bit.
I think they're still under investigation, but the helicopter was 200 feet too high at a minimum. That one has been released. Also, the air traffic controller had only one person monitoring both channels because the other one had gone home early. So there's more to come out on that. But I think it's still under investigation, and I don't want to overreach, in what is going on with it.
But I mean, when like 99% of the time it's pilot error, the pilot, and it's one of those planes is where they weren't supposed to be. And
well, it was a helicopter.
One of the aircraft
was clearly.
The aircraft, the helicopter was aware it was not supposed to be. The plane was doing what it was supposed to do, and that's that. I mean,
also, which one can move around easier?
Well,
right of way is a thing in the air, and this might be the 1% time where it was ATC. To be honest, one of the cardinal rules with ATC is you don't tell a pilot, "Hey, look around. Do you see a plane around somewhere?" You don't do that. You say, here are the coordinates. Here's where I expect to see a plane. Here's the altitude. Are you visualizing it? Do you have visual? And then wait for response. And if the response is no, you divert that aircraft, especially like you were saying, because it is more maneuverable. So,
he had acknowledged he was requesting visual separation. Yeah, from what I've been seeing, it's like he was probably looking at the wrong plane.
Yes,
look at your plane 5 o'clock. Well, if you guys ever been at the airport when they line up for landing, you could see an airplane 10 miles out because it's got its lights on.
Sure.
There's a pilot who actually did it was the #1 video on YouTube for like the past couple of days. He did a reenactment where he got the radio, he got the radar, and he has it all. And he shows the helicopter pilot. There was a plane behind them, and when the traffic controller kept saying, "Do you see the plane in front? And do you see the plane in front of you?" And they kept saying, "Yes, we see the plane. We see the plane. We see the plane." And he kept saying, and then when they got close, he kept saying, you can hear the person. "Do you have eyes on? Do you have eyes on? Because you're right there." And they kept saying, and the person kept saying, "Yes, yes, yes." Now the air traffic controller can see them like this, but they can't see if they're up, here. So that's when it was supposed to.
The problem is
that's where they said there was like an issue, and they kept, but you hear the air traffic controller kept saying, "Do you see him? Do you see him? You're there, you're there." And then that's when the crash happened. So you hear exactly what you guys are saying is what the air traffic controller was worried about, and the pilot kept confirming that they saw that.
I think that instead of saying, "Did you see it?" though, maybe it'll wind up being a training or something to explore. You need to say, "Stop your progress." Or give a very definitive statement of pull back, go up, go down.
They have training for that. They do that. It's just this might be one of those times where these people had to die to tighten up the rules for that 1 in a million issue. But there's a lot of close calls in the air.
It's not a tightening up of the rules. It is the rule. The rule. I have flown for a long time, and I'm telling you, I've never had an ATC guy say over the radio, "Hey, Danny, can you look around and tell me if you see a plane?" That has not happened. What does happen is they say, ahead of you, or at 1 o'clock, at your 1 o'clock, you'll see a plane that's traveling at this speed and this altitude going this direction. I need you to do X, Y, Z. And I get instructions directly from ATC, because if I'm VFR, I can then make a determination for myself and make some maneuvers. But if I'm relying on instruments, I need that 30,000 foot view of the skies. I can't determine that on my own. It's impossible, especially at night. So that's why I say I think in this case, this may have been an error from ATC, but I agree with you, Eric. It's going to be years before we find out. FAA has to finish their investigation.
And then why didn't the Army let because the pilot obviously was a woman, the pilot for the help for the chopper. Why did the Army hide that for so long? Why did
because
they?
she worked for Biden.
Yeah. But the problem is that it was a total Streisand effect. That was stupid. I feel like you literally released every single name except for one of the crew. Now, there are accidents all the time. Fault, things like that's determined later. But there are military accidents. As soon as the family has been informed, I understand you don't notify or release the name until people's families have been informed. But once that has happened, you release all the names.
I think they were afraid of the DEI implication of it.
Well, it doesn't matter. They actually got more of it by not releasing it, because they said, "Oh, it was a female, and we're not giving you the name." Well, what does that do? I mean, that just
puts you in. Yeah.
Well, it's like the Ann Coulter theory. The longer they hide the identity of a shooter, it tells you a lot about what their identity was. So
yeah.
Plus, if I were the family, I would request that they not release it. I've thought about this a lot, and if it were my family member, I wouldn't need political heat and everything else that was going into everything that was going on at the time. I would hate for my family to become the subject and target of a lot of vitriol.
Then don't release any of the names.
Yeah, don't release any of the names.
I agree, and I think that would have been the appropriate thing. Wait till the FAA report was done and then release the names.
I don't know if that's something they legally can do, though.
Yeah.
They can withhold the names.
No, they can't. They can like that. Okay.
Well, no, I mean either they can or they can't. But
I don't think they can.
If the family said don't release it and they withheld it, then they just did that. And I'm saying there were 3 people on that craft. Release none of them or all of them, because if you release none of them, then at least you just say, look, this is under investigation internally. The names will be released in a proper time. Blah blah blah. But you don't say, oh, you two, you have no rights. You're out there in public, but this family we care more about. It sends the wrong signal to everybody, and it looks awful, I feel. And it's harmful not only to the 2 that got released, but also I think it's harmful to her.
But you know what else shows me, though? It shows you that still that what Trump and them are doing is important, because look how even now they're still trying to protect DEI even in this situation by releasing all the names but this one, because they knew the political fallout of that. So you still have some people within the government still trying to push this particular agenda.
Oh, of course,
that's what I think they're trying to purge out now.
Well, and by the way, they'll never purge them all. I mean, it's kind of like Elon Musk bought X. There are so many social, activists that are still working for X. It's completely, it's impossible to weed everybody out. You do your best. Now, I'm on a shift to give poor Nick a chance to jump in.
As much Russ as possible.
Right. Anyway, I want to let Nick jump in because unfortunately it's not just the United States that has tragedies and mass killings. Unfortunately, Sweden had a mass killing that occurred, and the narrative that is being drawn apparently is not exactly accurate, and it may be political. So can you explain what's going on, Nick?
Yes, sadly, Sweden joined the Club of School Massacres just after noon, February 4th. The 911 call came in. It was a school shooting in the Risbergska School of Adult Learning, where cops responded. They were there within 5 minutes and were met by a massacre. They also saw the suspect who opened fire, then threw smoke grenades. So this guy was prepared, because the smoke grenades meant they can't just walk in. So the school was filled with smoke. They had to wait an hour. Luckily, if you can say that in this situation, the final shot they heard was the perpetrator turning the gun against himself. Now there
I wish
are
he started with himself. It would have been a much better.
Yeah, I mean, if you are that was your goal, start with yourself, please. But he didn't. Now there are speculations. First speculation, is this an Islamic terrorist? No, it wasn't. Is this a Nazi? As it turns out, no, it wasn't. The suspect, and I have the photo shared. If you can share it.
Hold on. Oh, okay.
This is Richard Anderson, or Rickard Andersson, native Swede. He, a couple of weeks before this event, he found out that from the social services that they were cutting him off. He has done no job in the last decade, only taken some obligatory courses, applied for work, but then he just stopped and just, I want the money, apparently. So that seems to be the factor.
So he is on what we call welfare here, is what you're saying?
Well, based on what you would call welfare, yes.
Okay, thank you.
So in order to get welfare here in Sweden, you have to do at least some effort. Apply for jobs, take courses to get yourself educated, or new competence, like a damn forklift driver or anything. But he decided, no, I don't want to do anything. And that seems to have been the factor that made him go to this, because this Risbergska School of Adult Learning was the place that the social services said, you have to go there. And he apparently thought to himself, okay, I'll go there and I will show you. So no apparent ideological reason, no apparent religious reason. This might change. We simply don't know, but there are no electronic traces of him being radicalized in any way, shape, or form. He was adapted enough to get a hunting license. He had 4 hunting rifles. So he had and in order in Sweden to get hunting license, you have to join a club, you have to written exams, a psychological profile, all of that. He just, that was good enough for him to obtain. So he decided to kill 10 people and then himself, injure 6 more.
This super chat that just came in from Intro Required, who also lives in Sweden, saying the explosive and anti-personnel grenade attacks here in Sweden are off the charts now. Is that sarcasm or is that real?
No, that's the gang war. That's unrelated to this event. That's just the gang wars.
It is a thing happening, though, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
But,
I mean, come on. That's kind of like.
Yeah, we have one. We have one every 3 days now of those. So, but they're mostly gangs fighting gangs over marijuana. But that's unrelated. But
whoa.
So they and all of this. Yeah, sorry. But so it's unrelated to this event. But as it seems, this is an introvert guy who just simply didn't want to work.
So he's an actual lone nut.
Yeah, a lone nut.
Okay. Well,
so no ideological, no apparent religious, just he did an introvert who didn't want to work. So he decided to go to this School of Adult Learning because social services had presence in that particular. Now, this school complex has 8 schools. He chose this part because that is where they were forcing him to attend school, and he didn't want to attend school. And they in that particular school, they had adult learning, they also had Swedish for migrants in that school. So half of the killed were migrant, not migrant per se, but they were of non-Swedish origin. But as it seems, that he didn't target exclusive migrants. There were every nationality, in Swedes, Syrians, Bosnians. I mean, yeah. So, and these are non-illegal migrants. So not even that could be construed as a base, as a reason. Of course, things might evolve. We don't know all the facts yet. But what came out of this is something that comes back to United States politics. What were the politicians' response to this? Any guesses?
Too many guns, obviously.
Too many guns, and we have to ban AR-15 type guns.
Okay, well, there you go.
Next guess. How many AR-15 type guns did this lunatic use?
Well, none, I'm sure.
None. Zero.
What do you use? Pistols? Because pistols actually
No.
are often used for mass shootings because they're easy, they're concealable, and they have a lot of rounds in each, and you can trade them out.
Anyway. No, he had 10 max. He had about 100 rounds, 10 rounds, around 100, and those were all emptied out. So he fired 100 times and killed 10 people and injured 6 more. And the final shot was to himself. So apparently he saved one. My theory, he saved one mag with one gun, with one bullet, but that was aimed for himself. So in less than 5 minutes, 100 rounds. And sadly, and this is how calculated evil this pathetic loser was. Smoke grenade, just to make sure that more people died, because cops couldn't get to them in time.
Amazing.
Gross.
Yeah, and the government AR-15, and many people, yes, ban AR-15, and then it's a minority now who says, but he didn't use AR-15 type. No, but they look bad.
All right.
But he didn't use. Yeah. So yeah, it's this. What Sweden joins United States. If anything bad happens to guns, ban AR-15 regardless of if it's used or not.
Yeah, I mean that's not. There's no surprise there. I want to jump again to my favorite topic of the day, which is LBL topics. Now, does everybody know that you can use hashtag LBL topics to make suggestions that may be covered on the show? And this can sometimes include memes like how Joe Neerman is using Jewish American mind tricks on the poor Israeli police force. Very interesting. This is a good topic here. LBL topics. Federal judges blocking DOGE access to government systems. Is that something that could actually be done? And the DOGE legality kind of goes into that as well. Is it even legal? Yes or no? A lot of Congress people and whatnot are coming out saying this is illegal. You can't do that. What say all you great minds here?
I mean, the idea the executive branch doesn't have authority to examine executive agencies is highly preposterous.
Yeah, it's pretty.
And
crazy.
the idea is, oh well, he can appoint his advisors to go do whatever needs to be done. They're working for the boss, and he shows up, and they're allowed to go do stuff. This idea that you can restrict them in that way, or well, they don't have clearances. You know how it works when you're the president? I want that guy to get a security clearance. You know what happens? He gets a security clearance, even if he's completely would never get one in any other situation. You get a security clearance. I mean, we had a former president who launched his career in the home of a guy who was running
Bill Ayers, Obama. Yes.
Yeah, I was trying to be. But yes.
Oh, no,
head of the
names.
Weather Underground. Yeah, the head of the Weather Underground. Like, if you try to get if you filled out your SF-86, it was like, oh, by the way, I'm BFF with a guy who was a complete communist terrorist. You know what happens most of the time, or should happen? Sorry, you don't get a clearance. The head of the CIA was a former member. John Brennan was a former member of the U.S. Communist Party. He got a clearance. It's not impossible. Like, so the idea they can't show up is highly preposterous. They have the right to go in. And I love the one article where it says the DOGE people were screaming at the scene, like the senior established employees, and calling them idiots. And I'm like, I'm sure they are. They're probably screaming, shut up, boomer. I'm doing my job.
Also, with respect to the legality of DOGE, Tom Renz did as an attorney that is on X. He did a really quick short thread, which was a really good write-up of analyzing the legality behind Doge and the way that Trump and his team very expertly used existing statutes and existing agencies that have been created under Congress and just repurposed it. And the whole point is that the executive branch, and he specifically took what was called the USDS, which is the United States Digital Service that was, I think, created by Obama. That it was an office that really was designed to help make the cyber interconnectivity more efficient. And he sort of repurposed that into, we're going to use this agency to make it more efficient. And the executive branch frequently will take existing statutes and sort of interpret them as they see fit. And then it basically would come down to, a court appointment if you're going to say he's using this agency incorrectly. And the executive branch has pretty wide latitude on how they use existing statutes. So he basically just repurposed an Obama law and used it to give legality to Doge without requiring Congress to pass some new law. And it was actually it's a legally brilliant move because it's so much more difficult to challenge it rather than saying, you have to go through Congress if you want to get funding or do anything. The funding's already built into it. All the employees you need to hire that's already built in under the existing statute that goes all the way back to Obama. So I thought it was a great breakdown by Tom Renz, and I probably can link it in the chat below, but it really explains how this is an actually legal entity, and it shows you the power of the executive branch comes in large part based on their ability to interpret existing statutes as suits their agenda.
I think when you talk about, because I think the issue with Doge isn't their authority to act, but to the extent which they can exercise that authority. So we all know the difference between someone who's confirmed by the Senate, because they can then wield the power of the executive branch being confirmed by the Senate. But the issue is, could Doge do that? Could Doge actually wield that authority without that type of authority going into, let's say, the Treasury Department and so forth and so forth? So that's why, I don't know if you remember, it was a read-only access, right? They can do read-only access. So what I do think the intelligence of the Trump administration is that, okay, we're not going to avoid Doge actually having to be confirmed by the Senate. What they did was they said, we're going to make them kind of like an advisory board, and then we'll do it through, like, for instance, with USAID. They went to Marco Rubio and said, Marco Rubio, we want you to institute these regulations because Marco Rubio has the authority to do it. They went to the Treasury Director and said, the Treasury Director, you have the authority to do it. And but now the issue is Doge says, okay, we need to be more granular. We need to go in and now get all the data and be able to analyze it. And now the issue is, should they be able to get this data to be able to analyze it without that congressional authority to act? And that, I think, is going to be the tension.
Well, I still don't understand the idea that there's no congressional authority for the executive agency to examine their own data. I mean, ultimately, that's what they're doing. It's the executive agency's data, the Treasury Department. It's their data.
Yes, but don't forget before. All right, so remember before they got their guy in, it was it was the civil service guy, and the civil service guy was the one pushing back on Doge. Well, you can't get this, you can't get this, you can't get this. Now that Trump's guy is in there, Trump's guy is like, you can do whatever you want. And now the argument is that Doge is not. They're not part of the Treasury Department. They aren't Treasury agents, so they aren't authorized by statute to look at all these Treasury to have this full access. Right. And that's what the argument now is.
And I understand, but yeah, that's like why Scott Bessett's like, okay, fine, they're working for me now.
Exactly.
But there's also funny parts. Like, he had that interview with the one reporter, and she's like, but they have access to the stuff. He's like, no, that's at the Federal Reserve. I'm not in charge of that. Yeah. You're worried about crap I don't control anyway. So, like, remember, at the end of the day, all this really is just, oh my God, they're gonna find out what we've been doing. That's really what this comes
that's
down
what it
to.
is. Yes.
This isn't about, oh no,
and we're just at the tip of the iceberg.
This is how Hitler started, guys. He audited things. He tried to balance the books.
Okay, new impeachment's already underway.
There's two things I want to say to that, which is, which is the left keeps screaming, it's only 1%, it's less than 1% of our overall spending. First and foremost, that's not a defense. That's just an embarrassing statement about how bloated in general our overall budget is. That if they would have a budget instead of 7 trillion, if they had a budget of 70 trillion, it would be less than 1/10%. That wouldn't make it any better.
Your
That
Honor,
doesn't make it any better.
Forged from his grandma was only worth $25. Really?
What's 1% of
Let's
5 trillion?
Yeah,
exactly.
1% of
5
5
billion
trillion is a huge
It's
number.
actually their number that they spend is 40 billion. But the other thing that should excite you about the fact that it's just 1% is how much more waste are we going to uncover in other agencies? This
That
is
just
this
means that's all we
agency.
know of.
There are other agencies which are
guess who said is next? Hegseth is opening DOD for audit.
Oh, thank God.
Well,
And 1% is huge. You guys think about it. If you're working 100 hours and the government's taxing you on those 100 hours, right? And let's say that the budget is based on your actual tax dollars, your actual labor. That's 1%. That's 1 hour that you get back that the government doesn't take from you. So I don't care what percentage it is. Every freaking dime, I want a refund. I want my money back. The government has effed up. I want my money back. I don't understand why this is so hard. I think they need to get a bunch of Karen attorneys in there.
Are you able to get it back?
Huh?
How would you get it back? How would you get it back? Who would you assert the claim against?
I don't know.
I don't know, but at least stop taking it.
Right, 100%.
They need a bunch of Karen attorneys in there with like
here's the
Karen
thing.
haircuts.
To what Danny, to exactly what you're saying is our current people are like, well, if it's already committed funds, you can't overturn. You have to spend what Congress wants you to spend. Here's the thing: our appropriations expires March 14th. We don't have an annual budget. The only budgeting we have is until March 14th.
The payday loans run out the 14th. We need more.
And look, under the congressional budget, there's some mandatory spending and there is some discretionary spending. So the discretionary spending, you would assume you don't have to spend, and the mandatory spending, okay, well that dies as of March 15th. On the Ides of March, any penny that's been appropriated is no longer. There's nothing appropriate for March 15th and beyond. And that's the thing, is that we don't have to wait till the end of the fiscal year to start seeing these things correct, because Congress has sucked so much at creating a decent budget for years. Now this actually plays into actually being able to cut the waste much sooner than we otherwise would have had to do if they actually competent at creating a budget.
Question for our foreign correspondents here, Ian and Nick. What about in your countries? I mean, are you having this type of cost overrun problem, auditing going on, or if not? I mean, how are you guys reacting to the concept of DOGE going through right now and looking at the budget?
I mean, right now, the sentiment in Canada is fairly anti-American. So whatever the U.S. does, Canada is going to not be okay with. That's pretty much how that goes.
Yeah, I had a whole bunch of Canadians yelling at me the other day because I put, Canada caves to Trump. And they're like, no, he didn't. It was up the vine. It was up the vine. I was like, okay.
Uncle, I hope in Canada you guys don't decide to have we're going to do a tea party, but we're going to shove barrels of oil in the harbor.
Well, the net result of all of this may be that the political sentiment changes to support the existing party.
Yes,
that'd be horrible, though.
And so the net result of this may be that the gun bans that I've been very thrilled about possibly going away end up being preserved by the direct actions of Trump. So not a huge fan of that myself.
No.
So.
Yeah. And over here, I mean, Sweden is still more or less a socialistic country. So not even the right-wing parties in the government say they want what insight in how we spend money. No, that's bad. Do it for them. Do it for those guys. Yeah, good. Not for us. So yeah, but something happened down on the continent, because all of a sudden some of the Eastern European countries, they believe this is good, but they want it to be done on a European Union level, which is interesting because that in itself, well, in order for the European Union to do this, then they have to have the power to go through independent nations' economy.
Mm.
And the only way they can do that is if we go full on the United States of Europe, which is quite weird because that is complete 180 turn against everything they have been.
United
saying.
States of Europe is next on Trump's list.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Nick, our future American brother, we welcome you.
But then again, we also one of the big things here is that Denmark has offered Canada to become a member of the European Union.
What?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, okay.
That's
Technically, Canada and Denmark do
what?
share a border.
So far, Greenland is
Land border,
only
in fact.
justifiable as someone who cares about like American intervention. Greenland is the only one that makes sense. That's the
Yeah, but-
only one that makes sense for
Yeah.
American interests. That's
If
the
we
only
can
one.
buy it, and they
Yeah,
sell.
if we
I
can
mean,
buy it,
in
it's a good
fairness.
deal.
Already, and this is something that had been in the talks for a long time, but Denmark is now like very open to the, oh, hey, you want to increase your presence up in the Thule Air Base way up in the north of Greenland. They're allowing a greater and greater American presence there now.
Well, that's good to hear.
So, yeah,
Good
well,
for
they're
them.
like, well,
All right.
I'm just saying they're starting to realize, and you know, for Denmark, for example, they changed the coat of arms of the royal house. Before Greenland and the Faroe Islands had just like one little corner of part of one of the quadrants of the coat of arms, but now they've got their own pieces, and it's their way of trying to like, hey, look, guys, we actually do care about you. You're part of the family. Like, you know, big hug.
Representation.
Yeah, please don't vote on the
DEI.
website.
No.
Don't hold.
I take that back. Panama also makes sense. Panama Canal, we
100%.
also need to take back 100%. So that,
We already did it
and
once.
that's, yeah,
That's
we
the
did it
way-
once before. We'll take it again. It's
That's
fine.
the way
We-
Trump has been operating so far this term. We saw him do a little bit as Trump 45, but the way he operates is he makes a ridiculously large ask as to what it is that he wants.
Like Gaza.
Right, and I think and with Gaza, and that's what I actually wrote about with respect to Gaza. He makes a huge ask saying, "This is what I want. I want to take over Greenland," and everyone like laughs at it. But the point is, then he repeats it a few more times, and the target or potential victim of that expansionism that he's asking for ends up running to the table to give him something rather than him coming saying, "Hey, can you please allow me to access Greenland's water?" Instead,
anchoring.
Yeah, he basically makes a huge ask, and then they come running to him saying, "Please, what do you want? Please don't rape me too hard." That's essentially what ends up happening.
Yeah, but when you start threatening your neighbors with rape, it really doesn't make them your
Can
friends.
we not use
That's
the
the
word?
problem. That was the word he just used.
We're
though.
gonna get
I
banned.
know. I was going to yell at him, but I
sorry.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
Everybody, do me a
this
favor.
is
If
not a
somebody
great
uses the
topic.
wrong word, don't
I'm
do it
doing
again.
the whole YouTube thing. I didn't realize it's a bad word. I'm sorry.
Jesus. Anyway, yeah, I definitely don't agree with all that. The Gaza thing is going to get very, very interesting. That's
pulled back
splitting
on
MAGA in half. I mean,
he pulled back on the Gaza thing a little bit. The press secretary did it.
Well, only in the sense of, well, no, there's not going to be any
Yeah.
troops. I do think that his hope is that Saudi and Jordan and Egypt will say, no, we got it. Just stay out. We got it.
I hope so.
We'll do it. But
I'm gonna be honest. My anti-war friends here, but suggesting moving 1.7 million people out of the Gaza Strip and American troops, that sounds a lot like invasion to me. Like invading these people. And let's just be clear. The argument of the place has been bombed out. Just imagine we bomb the place out. So instead of letting you go back to your homes, we're going to relocate you and take it over and make it a paradise. The rubble.
We've tried
one exception.
Like really,
we didn't bomb them out. Okay, we did not bomb them out.
They used our bombs.
No, we didn't bomb them out, but they've been bombed out, and now we're going to build a paradise
but
on the dead bodies of the
clarify.
Palestinians. It's like I think I understand anchoring, but this guy kind of went a little far with that. And again, I don't want any American troops on the ground in Gaza. I think that's ridiculous.
I don't want to see any troops. I don't want to see any money. I don't want to see anything. That is an ideal scenario. There are no troops or money, and if that is not what Trump is thinking, if he is thinking of making that, I want any monies that go in there to be an investment that we actually can recoup. I'll tell you this much. I think what Trump is hoping for with this particular thing, my thought, which I expressed on X, but I don't know if I really talked about it so much here, is I think that he's hoping that he recognizes that the idea of an American presence in Israel is something that would just be repugnant to the entire Muslim
You mean the
world.
Middle East, not Israel. Middle
No,
East.
well, I'm saying like, and is taking over a portion of the Gaza or Middle Eastern territory there. Okay, so the idea of part of their Muslim ideology believes that the entire Levant should be under the exclusive control of Islam. And that's a major part of their objection to the existence of the state of Israel. Well, the only thing worse than having the state of Israel there from an Islamist perspective is having the mighty animal of the United States actually seizing a portion of the Levant in Gaza. And let me tell you this, Gaza itself, it's obviously war ravaged now, but the property is on the Mediterranean. It really could be like,
probably Dubai part 2.
It could be Dubai part 2. Right. It could be such beautiful and wealthy territory and really valuable territory if it was not being ravaged by war and violence. And I think what Trump is basically thinking is, if he actually can sell the notion that the United States is serious about taking it over, it now creates a whole different political environment in the Middle East. If you're a country which is willing to be allied with Israel, you yourself are in a political danger. Because if you're the UAE, if you're Saudi Arabia, and you're really like, you know what, I don't really care that much about Israel being here, but if I say that publicly, I'm going to be deposed and executed. I can't say that. I can't help them with this Palestinian situation without literally seeing myself, my wife, and kids and family being eradicated and literally strung up and hanged. So I can't do that. So I'm going to come out here and give this speaking point. But if Trump comes out and he starts saying, well, we're planning on going in there in Gaza and taking over, you're going to see these big, massive spas and resorts. There's going to be a big hotel with a big, giant golden T and American flag on it. That is really repugnant to the Islamic world. And he might be thinking that opens up a doorway now for UAE, Saudi Arabia, or any 50 other Muslim nations who are not quite so hostile to Israel, come in there and say, you know what, we are going to go in, take over Gaza, and keep out the great Satan of America, and that's why we're doing it. And that way they'll pick up this really rich territory and they'll be hopefully less hostile to Israel. And perhaps that could bring peace to the region if the Gaza Strip was taken over by UAE and Saudi Arabia, and those countries could be saving face by saying, we're not trying to help Israel, we're trying to keep out the great Satan of America. That's the speculation that I have as to what Trump is thinking, that he's trying to put factors into play that make it easier for other Arab nations to come in there and be the ones who are actually controlling Gaza.
Yeah, it goes back to that, what we talked about earlier about these unreasonable demands. Yeah, but that's a common tactics in negotiations. I go through it every week with people not unlike Trump. So yeah, I actually, that makes perfect sense.
The problem is with the unreasonable negotiations, you do have to put them within the realm. Like if I go and I'm looking, when I'm looking to buy property, which I just did, you put a low offer, but you don't send them like, hey, I'm going to just take it with my guns. Or you don't say, hey, I'm going to give you $12, because then they'll be like, yeah, we're just cutting off negotiation.
No,
a
I'm
lot
going
of
to
this
push
stuff
back
can be
on that.
counterproductive.
I'm going to push back on that hard, because here's the thing. I think the rest of the world has forgotten that America can. Not that we should, not that we could, but that we actually can. That's the problem. And that's what Trump is doing, is he's reasserting to both our allies and our enemies that we can do these things. Not that we should, but that we can. And that's important.
And
just
that
like
he's
when
crazy
I
enough
go,
that he might. And
right.
The crazy factor has to
settle a
come in.
case, just like when I go to settle a case, I file the damn complaint, or I have that complaint ready to file in hand, and I send it to opposing counsel. I say, do you want to talk? Because I sent you an invite last week and I didn't hear anything back. So I'm just letting you know, we are asking for X million of dollars. So if you want to go down that route, we can. I don't want to. I would rather be friends. So do you want to talk or not? And if it's what gets them to the negotiating table, then I'm going to support it. Even if it's crazy, and even if it really affects me too, because it's trade right now is rough. and currency imbalances are really rough right now. So
I love the currency imbalance. I mean,
yeah, it's good for you, Nick.
the American dollar is worth so much more.
It's so good right now, but
It's so excellent to be a streamer. I mean, if I'm making $100 for a month ago was worth roughly 1,100 Swedish krona. Now it's worth almost 1,200 Swedish
Nick
krona.
is now doing shots of champagne on his stream.
Yeah.
Nick is doing, yeah.
But a wise
I'm making
litigator,
bank over here.
but a wise litigator takes that complaint and goes, okay, buddy, whatever, rolls their eyes, starts drafting their answer, and then says, sure, let's go ahead and have a meeting, and then utilizes that meeting to gain information on their opponent. And I've made very, very good friends and relationships from opposing counsel as a result of the fact that they know that I can, and I know that I can. There's a mutual respect, and we both come to the negotiating table knowing that we're both willing to fight for what we want.
But
so I see nothing wrong with that. That's all.
We've all negotiated deals before, and there's a difference between an offer that insults you versus an offer that's just a lowball offer, right?
Yes.
And I think
I only get those insults.
And I think Ian was making a difference between an insulting offer of $12 for a $1 million house when we're talking about reasonable. I think that's the distinction here. I do think saying we're gonna, when he was asked, so we're gonna send troops to Gaza, and he was like, that's on the table. I think that was kind of in the insulting because that's World War III. Let's just not even.
Well, it's insulting to us, the American people.
Troops to Gaza is World War III. We all know that. That's not even a question. So I don't think he'll go that far. But it's interesting to say. But in practice, that's never going to happen unless you guys can tell me I'm wrong. Tell me sending American troops to take over Gaza is not the start of World War III.
It better as hell not start. Well, we better as hell not send troops there. And that's the thing. When you go to the negotiating table, you're acting in the interest of your client. Mm-hmm. And so if Trump is not acting in the interest of the American people, which again, I personally don't think that invading Gaza would be, then he shouldn't be doing it and he shouldn't be threatening it. You shouldn't be, spelling out threats that your ass can't cash. That's just how it is.
He would be going against everything that he has run on both times about the quagmires getting in the Middle East, everything we did in Iraq, everything in Afghanistan. He ran on this no more foreign. If we get involved,
no more nation building.
Yeah, that's nation building. I don't know how else you can call it anything but that.
It's the definition of nation building. We're going to send the troops in, kick everybody out there, build it into paradise. That's definition.
Greenland is a potential purchase. If he buys it, that's not nation building. That's an exchange. It's buying a property. I don't see the problem. It's just like Alaska. But yeah, the whole Gaza thing, that definitely and it's upsetting MAGA themselves. I mean, his base. So not just the public, but his base is going, wait a minute here. What are you doing? And I think that's going to be a challenging thing. I'm quite sure we'll be talking about it on America's Untold Stories today at 5:30. If anyone is interested, I have a funny feeling that my show partner may have a different opinion than I do too. So there could be some, there could be a little bit of tension going in there. I don't know. I hope not. I'm sure the chat's going to be quite lively. But what is everybody else doing to wrap things up? Danny, what do you have coming up?
We are finishing up the Baldoni complaint, and then we will move over to Blake Lively's complaint that was filed. My guess is they'll probably amend, and then we're going to look at some of the spurious complaints that followed that. There's a little bit of a dearth in terms of really famous or popular cases going on in criminal aspects. So my focus right now is on the civil side. We also are going to be covering a lot of these confirmation hearings. As you guys already know, a certain confirmation was delayed, which was a little bit expected.
Like his potential bosses was delayed.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So this is going to get very interesting. And I think it's good to go back and look at the highlights. And frankly, I want to talk about Trump's tax plans and the implications that might have on investors moving forward for those who are interested. So, yep, that's what we're up to. It's going to be a ton of fun. And we have a grifting stream probably coming up next week. Go ahead.
Did I see Elaine coming out supporting Blake Lively? Did I see that?
You did see that. And it's so funny because I made like one post comparing this to Johnny Depp, and oh my gosh, I got so many, I was shocked. I was both a misogynist and a feminist in the same post, and I have no idea why I was labeled as either. I mean, I feel like the evidence is presented right now really weighs in favor of Baldoni. And if there's anything I feel at this point is just sorry for this poor guy, and a lot of disgust towards these Hollywood elites who seem to be working together to destroy this man's life. That's just based on the evidence we have right now. These are very fact specific cases, obviously. So we're going to have to wait until she has the opportunity to give a little bit more than what she's given. If that's all she's got, though, she's in big trouble. This is not going to end well for her or Ryan Reynolds.
All right, Ian, I know you're following that diligently. What else do you have going on?
Yeah, I've been covering that as well. It's kind of striking just how badly they've played this, because there's always two battles, right? There's the PR battle around the court case, and then there's the court case itself. And it seems like they're on track to lose both really badly, but already, like, she basically set her house on fire, and it is tremendous to watch that. Also covering, so I'll be covering that on Monday, probably some more on that. There's another suit that's weighted in that is probably not going anywhere because it's based on the whole, like, hey, you said all this stuff in court. It's like, well, there's privilege issues there. Covering some of the Karen Reed stuff as well. I've got a video that I've got to get out on the GWAX lawsuit, which is now ongoing. It's entered the sort of hot phase. That is a gun company getting sued by, amongst other things, it's ostensibly a IP case, except there is no IP. And
is that still going?
Yes,
that is going to trial.
Yeah.
What?
And GWAX does not have taken L.
Wow. Oh wow.
GWAX really ought to have sued their lawyer, because they bought this company and they're like, so we got all this IP, right? It's like, well, you got all the IP they have, which is nothing. There's no copyrights. There's no patents. There's no anything. And that's time to sue your lawyer. But instead they're suing the company they bought things from. But they're also partially funded by this guy who is massively anti-gun. And the issue is IP over an AR-15 design. And so, of course, there is no IP, as mentioned, but so he is in deposition saying, I hate the AR-15. I would like it to not exist. And so that's a whole fun, package there. Covering as well the whole chaos with Cody Wilson, who's getting sued for actually stealing IP in the most obviously lawsuit trap way. Like, there was so many things that say, hey, this is a giant trap.
Is it really a trap when you intentionally trigger it, knowing you're triggering it, and you do so with a smile on your face?
I don't think he knew he was getting sued, but yeah, it's going to be a whole gong show. So there's a whole bunch of fun things going there.
And the best thing about that lawsuit, guys, if you like the tonsil twin stuff, David Gingras is Cody Wilson's lead attorney.
Yeah, it was that's a choice. It's like, hey, who's getting clowned on the most in, like, short of Jeanette Braun, who I'm also clowning on. But I guess as an aside, Canada is also potentially considering legalizing BDSM, which is currently actually legal here. So also fun.
Wow. That's
interesting. Yeah.
Good times there. Okay.
Yeah.
So for your next vacation plans, if you are into a side of kink, Nick, how's BDSM in Sweden?
Smacking around. I don't know. Strap on. No. Oh, yeah. I don't know. I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole.
What do you have coming up?
I have Well, the continues on the ASAP Rocky trial. The judge is finally fed up with the attorney's shenanigans. Today, he held a speech in front of the attorneys that was very, very interesting. Hopefully, he will enforce what he actually said. I will cover this as soon as this stream is over. I will start that one. Then, of course, once the ASAP trial is concluded, I will continue with the other California case, the celebrity hairdresser murder trial, where they now, 7 years later, put his wife. And it's, again, I don't know how they got it to trial, because the only evidence they have now compared to 7 years ago is the co-killer of the celebrity hairdresser, who got the options: either we prosecute you and you will get life in prison, or you testify against her and you walk free. That's the only difference between now and 7 years ago. So, yeah. That will be interesting. I hope that picks up steam, because the view count hasn't been overwhelming. But then again, it's at the same time as the ASAP Rocky trial. So I will continue that. Other than that, well, if any updates on the Swedish massacre pops up, I will cover that.
All right. Sean,
Careful with that. They
up?
will demonetize so hard on stuff like
that.
that.
I noticed. I had 30 continuous viewers yesterday. Yeah, I noticed.
I'm so sorry. That's so rough.
And later tonight, I will have a panel show on the ASAP Rocky with Katnoff Williams and Sean over here.
Yes. Yeah, I've been watching ASAP Rocky. It's a very interesting trial, and I think it's I was watching it partially out of, the people involved, but also it's not a murder trial.
No.
Like, that's one of the things. Like, I know that's all people want to watch, and I know that's what Court TV and Long Crime and all this stuff show, but a majority of trials in this country are people committing crimes where no one's dead. And this is a great example of it. And I do think this is very important to see. And we do get to see in this case, just an absolute, dumpster fire of a victim on the stand. And I think that Rocky may very well win because of that. Now, otherwise, ASAP Rocky has got a very, very tough hill to climb at this point. There's been a lot of evidence that's come out, and it's very circumstantial, but his claim of, I brought a fake gun to threaten somebody with, it totally wasn't a real gun, bro. Trust me. I don't know if that's going to work. I don't know if the jury's going to buy that, but we'll see.
Well, what if it was a pink water pistol?
Well, it definitely wasn't pink. It definitely wasn't pink.
No, I mean, they have video of Rocky brandishing something that looks like a gun.
Yes.
And then you have another surveillance video where you hear 2 gunshots. People have been convicted with less.
Yes. So,
all right.
It's very interesting.
Nate, what do you have going on?
I'm like in shock now, because I'm telling you guys what I'm looking at right now. This is what I'm going to be doing later on. So I was looking at a case. There was a case that I covered a couple of months ago. The woman's name was Letby. Now,
Lucy
right?
Letby, in England.
Yes, she was convicted of killing seven murders and 6 more attempts. Yeah, she was essentially an angel of death. So I was just doing a follow-up on it, and come to find out, now they believe that they believe she's totally innocent. They reviewed all the alleged murders, and found that none of the babies actually were murdered. They all died of natural causes.
Well,
and
great they found that out now.
The science that they used to come to the determination was all essentially fake, and even the statistical evidence was all fake. So they're calling it the greatest miscarriage of justice in UK criminal history. And they believe that she's innocent and she didn't kill any of the kids.
Wow.
Yes. So they had a 2-hour press conference where they went through all the evidence. Now, a lot of the times, because they were like, hey, a lot of the evidence was the statistical anomaly of how can this one nurse have handled all these babies who happen to die? And they show that that's actually, if you're, it's like saying, if I work in a morgue? How come I'm having how come you have so many dead bodies around you? It's like, yeah, she was in a unit where babies just happen to be.
It's a high risk unit. Yeah,
so babies are obviously going to die because that's where you work. So that was one of the issues that they found, that they were like, she just was happened to be unlucky, but that doesn't mean she killed. So they went over it, and they exhumed everybody, went over everybody, and found that everything that they were saying about her, the way the babies died and everything, all that was fake. So that's what they're dealing with now. So they're saying that she's innocent. So I'm doing that video, and that's probably what I'm going to be working on the rest of the day. And obviously, there's another video with a cop. She gets a job. She's 24 years old, and she sleeps with everybody, like 7 other cops. And she's like the boy. She even sleeps with the chief, I believe.
Are you talking about
that Tennessee one?
Yeah, the Tennessee one. But there's been an update because she sued and she got $500,000, but now the cop that was fired that she slept with, he's also suing and he wants to get paid. So there's like a whole bunch of stuff.
There is one more thing I was working on, Eric, and I know it's a little more important to me than you guys, but it's going to be an interesting case. The Cleveland Browns are moving to one of the suburbs. They're trying to, and there is a law that was passed in the state of Ohio saying that if your team is trying to move, whatever city you're in has the right to buy you out as a first right of kind of a first right of refusal. And the idea is that an actual legal thing you can force on a company like that. And it looks like that's going to be going to court.
Taxpayers' money for a sports team.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Green Bay is owned actually by the community.
Yes.
But if it was a privately owned team, that's an interesting question about going on. All right. Well, to wrap up, did I tell everybody about LBL topics? That there's this hashtag that you can use on X and suggest topics that are coming up. And if you follow me on X, Hunley Eric on X, I will be auto tweeting out lists of what's coming up, what's going to be happening, and you can be informed by that. But please consider using the hashtag. We did cover different LBL topics from there, and it'll get more and more refined as we go. The more people use it, the better it's going to get.
Yes.
And I think you all will enjoy it very much. And on that note, everybody, thank you very much, and we'll see you soon.
All right, you're in my courtroom now, Buster. And let me tell you, there's so many of you here that are downright guilty of not subscribing to laid back law, yet watching full-blown episodes. Why don't you get your life together and just hit that button already? We all know you need it.